Good morning. Today I am going to render to you my report as I am assigned to present to you my report about bilingualism and multilingualism processes. So this is concentrating on the neurolinguistics perspective of second language acquisition. So before presenting to you the entirety of my report, I want to present to you a short video. It's a video clip that is relating to my report for today.
Understanding more than one language makes it easier to navigate the world and interact with other people. But it's the cognitive effects of language acquisition, what it does to the brain, that's truly extraordinary. Learning how to think and communicate in another language gives our brains a powerful cognitive workout. Bilingual brains are more developed in areas that organize and process speech. The motor cortex, which controls the lips and mouth. The Wernicke's area, where the brain organizes language for active speech. The Broca's area, where language sounds are processed. And the auditory cortex, where auditory stimuli is received. Research shows that bilingual students enjoy better academic outcomes in the classroom. They demonstrate increased reading comprehension, better long-term memory, and find it easier to apply logic. In 2004, psychologists Ellen Bialystok and Michelle Martin-Reed conducted an experiment. They invited two groups of young people, one monolingual, one bilingual, to divide a collection of objects by shape and color, and found that those who could speak a second language had greater success than those who couldn't. Bialystok's research also showed that the brains of bilingual adults are more resistant to Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia. The dual language learners of today are more likely to be the global citizens of tomorrow. Studies have compared the attitudes of bilingual and monolingual elementary students towards Spanish-speaking people, and found that the former viewed them more positively. By reading dual language texts, students are exposed to other cultures and are more likely to value inclusivity and embrace diversity, while dual language learners demonstrate increased levels of empathy because they're able to see things from multiple perspectives. Dual language immersion programs produce young people who are academically capable, culturally inclusive, and better equipped to thrive in all walks of life.
Okay, now what is multilingualism? So there is no one definition of it, but multilingualism means people who speak or have been spoken in two or more languages since birth, or people who have been speaking one language since birth and later learned other languages. There are different types of bilinguals. We have compound bilinguals, and we have coordinate bilinguals, and we have subordinate bilingual. So compound bilinguals are those that has one semantic system but two linguistic codes. Usually refers to someone whose two languages are learned at the same time, often in same context. Compound bilingualism is also called as additive bilingualism. It is when a child is raised by bilingual parents in both languages. In both languages are used in the house or in home. So the child grows with two languages learned simultaneously in the same environment. While coordinate bilinguals has two semantic systems and two linguistic, usually someone whose two languages are learned in two languages in distinctively separate contexts. So this is when the person perceives the two languages as separate. Okay, because he learns them separately in different environments in context. Other word of Coordinate bilingualism is subtractive bilingualism. Okay. The third type of bilinguals, we call it subordinate bilingual. This is when the weaker language is represented to the stronger language. And I'm going to show you an illustration of this. So this is the mental lexicon of bilinguals. So this is a representation of compound bilinguals. This is a presentation. This illustration two sets of subsystem, representation of coordinate bilingual, and this is for the subordinate bilingual, as you can see. Okay. Now let's talk about hemispherical lateralization of language. Hemispherical lateralization of language is the involvement of one hemisphere of brain to a particular activity, which makes it dominant. Language is believed to be heavily lateralized function, with left hemisphere dominating the right one in handling language-related tasks. I found out that when I was scrolling down, I was scanning different kinds of reading materials about this topic. I found out that there are researches suggesting that bilingualism can slow down the advance of age-related mental issues such as dementia and Alzheimer's. And that in bilingual adults' brain tissue, which is called the the gray matter, it is actually denser with the bilingual adults compared with monolingual people. So monolingual people are those people living in the US, UK, and Australia. Those are who are just using one language all throughout their lives. Although speaking more than two languages does not necessarily makes you a more intelligent person, it helps stimulate and increase brain connections. So when learning a new language, it's like an exercise to the brain, and it will actually improve your cognitive skills. Moving on, left hemisphere controls lexical and syntactic language, like writing and speech, phonetics, and semantics. It does not mean that right hemisphere serves no purpose. As we all know, we have the left and the right regions of our brain. We have the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere. So it does not mean that the right hemisphere serves no purpose because the left hemisphere is doing the work the whole time. As researchers found out, patients which get their right hemisphere surgically removed show no aphasia, but do show deficiencies in verbal selection and metaphor understanding. So how multilingual switch between languages then? Researchers have used brain imaging techniques like functional magnetic resonance imaging, or we call it fMRI, to investigate which brain regions are active when bilingual people perform tasks in which they are forced to alternate between their two languages. When bilinguals have to switch between naming pictures in Spanish and naming them in English, they actually show increased activation in the following. These are medical terms, and I'm just going to give you guys I don't want to mispronounce the words, but I'm just going to give you the acronyms of it. PFC, ACC, BSG, and the left IFG. Okay, patients with damage or lesion in these parts of brain undergo involuntary change in language while speaking. Okay, now there is a main question here, how multilingual's brain is different. Now in order for us to answer this, we have to answer the questions like, are areas associated with language 2 and language 1 same or different? So we're talking about the brain areas. Is multilingual's brain structurally different? What about brain activation? So there is a major hypothesis: different languages, different brain regions. But studies conducted on bilingual aphasiac patients show that in most of the cases, only one of the mastered language is affected. This gives an indirect proof to the above mentioned hypothesis. Different languages, different brain regions. Eye tracking studies show that at early stages of language acquisition, both the languages are parallelly activated and have shared cortical structures. fMRI scans show that for the late acquired languages, language-sensitive regions in the frontal lobe of brain, which is called the Broca's area, are spatially separated from that of language-sensitive regions of native language. But when second language is acquired early, native and second language sensitive areas tend to overlap. But in both late and early bilingual subjects, the temporal lobe language sensitive regions, or the Wernicke's area, also show effectively little or no separation of activity based on the age of language acquisition. It has come to know that in fMRI scans, it shows that there are also language-specific zones in brain with language to specific sites located exclusively in the posterior, temporal, and parietal lobes. Bilinguals possessed 7 perisylvian language zones, which are language to restricted. Now, those research findings and FRMI or fMRI scans are actually answers the first sub-question, and this answers the second question: structural changes in bilingual's brain. So we found out that learning a second language increases the density of gray matter in the left anterior parietal cortex, and age of the second acquisition and proficiency in that language affects its extent. So this is the illustration of a brain scan of a particular person. This is the explanation of the things that I have just presented you a while ago, so it will be easier for you to identify that structural reorganization in the bilingual brain, when it comes to proficiency in second language, looks like here the gray matter density increases, okay? And this is the age and acquisition of second language. So the structure, the learning of second language increases the density of gray matter, okay? Actually, okay, as age of acquisition of the second language is increasing. So the gray matter density also decreases. Further study shows that there is more brain activation in bilingual brain. Cerebral blood flow (CBF) measuring techniques show that in word repeating tasks, there is more blood flow in left putamen of brain for second language. Crazy. Word generation has also led to larger foci of brain activation for the second language within multilinguals. Activation is principally found in the left prefrontal cortex, which includes the parts of the inferior frontal, the middle frontal, and precentral gyri. Now, this is the answer, according to researchers, for the third question, the effect of age of acquisition. So, the subcortical organization of languages in bilingual brain can change according to the age of acquisition of second language. So, it was found out, according to studies done on trilinguals, it shows that more neural substrates of Broca's area are engaged in performing some language task for later acquired languages. Language activation follows order such as like this: more on language 3, lesser in language 2, least in language 1. Later acquired languages require more activation. Now, what about the effect of proficiency in language? So, researchers show that very early bilinguals display no difference in brain activation for language 1 and language 2, which is assumed to be due to high proficiency in both language. Larger cerebral activation is measured when a language is spoken less fluently than when languages are spoken more fluently. Okay, so to further illustrate to you about what were the things I was talking about a while ago. So this is an illustration, a different fMRI scan of a volunteer, which is a bilingual person. So as you can see, this is just one person's fMRI scan. So this images of a volunteer performing silent word generation in his native language A, okay, in a foreign language in which he is fluent B, and in a language in which he is not fluent C. Most of the activation is observed in prefrontal and frontoparietal regions. Note that the increased number of activated pixels for the language in which the subject is not fluent. As you can see, there are a lot of pixels right here. So it means hollow parts. Now let's do the comparison, proficiency versus age of acquisition. So generally, these go parallelly, but what happens in contradictory cases like late proficient bilinguals? So studies show that proficiency outweighs age of acquisition. Cerebral representation is going to be same for two languages if one is equally proficient in both of them. It doesn't matter when they were acquired. Okay, now those answers the sub-questions of the main question, how multilingual's brain are different. So those are medical studies. We can attest and we can debate about those findings, but I think those are strong evidences that will support and will explain our studies. Okay, now let's talk about the advantages of being multilingual. Bilinguals are more adept than monolinguals at solving certain kinds of mental puzzles. It shows that bilingual people are better than monolingual people at switching between two tasks, as what I showed you in a video a while ago. This actually supports that video representation, that video explanation about multilinguals or bilinguals. Now, I want to add more things about it. So, I also found from other sources that I read, it was found out that researchers even suggest that bilingualism can slow down the advance of age-related mental issues such as dementia, and that in bilingual adults' brain tissue called the gray matter, which we talked about a while ago, is denser compared with monolingual levels. So comparing the bilinguals and the monolingual levels, the gray matter uh, tissue in the brain is even denser compared with when comparing the two of them. So who are these monolingual levels? Those are people who only speak one universal language, and that those people are actually coming from US, UK, and Australia. Although speaking more than two languages does not necessarily make someone a more intelligent person, it helps stimulates and increase brain connections. So learning a new language is like an exercise to your brain, and that will improve your cognitive skills. So say, for example, when bilinguals have to switch from categorizing objects by color, red or green, to categorizing them by shape, circle, or triangle, they do so more rapidly than monolingual people, which I don't know why. Okay. So this is a presentation, representation, of bilinguals' performance on a sustained selective attention task and its correlation with subcortical processing and multi-talker babble. So as you can see, bilinguals are performing better, okay, than the monolingual people. Okay, now to further explain what I just shared with you a while ago, so this is a clinical study. They said that bilingualism also helped adults. Bilingualism's effects also extend into the twilight years of a person. Bilingual adults show delay in onset on Alzheimer's disease by 4 years. So this is a proof of that. So as you can see, this is a table, okay, representation. This is a clinical evidence. It shows that the benefits of being bilingual, speakers of more than one language fend off the onset of dementia symptoms for an average of 4 years, longer than monolingual patients, researchers found. They look at the age of the onset of visible symptoms in men and women and the age when the subject's symptoms first necessitated a visit to a doctor. So as you can see, the difference between the two, the monolinguals, the bilinguals. Okay, so if brain is an engine, bilingualism improve its mileage. Actually, brains of the bilingual people appear to be in worse physical condition. But this suggests that despite of more brain damage, bilinguals were able to resist more. But is bilingualism always a helpful thing? Is it always a boon? Okay, now this is another study. Researchers gives evidence that bilingual children have less vocabulary in one language as compared to monolinguals, which is very self-explanatory, considering that that is not their native language, of course, compared to a monolingual, which is, like have been indoctrinated or have been using the language since birth, one universal language since birth. So they would probably be acquiring more vocabulary compared with a bilingual. So they take longer time and make more errors in naming tasks because of it. So to further show you what I'm talking about, so this is an illustration of it, a clinical evidence as well. So this line here is the monolinguals line, and this is the bilinguals line, as you can see the difference between the two. And this is the age levels, and this is the mean PPVT, STD, or mean score. Okay, this is all about vocabulary acquisition of between monolinguals and bilinguals. Now, despite all the findings, the clinical studies and clinical evidences, still there are a lot of questions that are left unanswered. This could be a good um, window for us to study if we are really up to learning linguistics and maybe further pursue neurolinguistic studies. So these are the questions. Which proficiency level to be declared as bilingual or multilingual? What is the best age at which one should start learning second language? Whether the two languages should be similar or different to get more advantage? Whether there is a limit to number of languages up to which a person will always be in gain? Whether there are any better languages that should be learned. Okay, now these are my references for this report. And that's it. Thank you so much for listening.